Okay, welcome to our parent panel interview. We have three courageous SKS parents with us today. One quick logistic before we get started. If you have a question, comment it on Facebook. We'll do our best to answer that live. If we don't get it to live, we will respond afterwards and we'll get back to you for sure. With us today, we have Patsy O'Shea from the UK. Her superstar, SKS superstar is Archie. We got Megan Cohort from Alabama. Her superstar is Aubry. And we have Naz Kelly from North Carolina, and she parents Ezra, which we effectively call Easy E. Welcome, parents.
Hi.
Let's go ahead and
Hi.
let's go ahead and jump right in. So Patsy, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. The first question we have is, can you give us a little glimpse into your daily activities and how SKS shapes your daily routines?
Yeah, we stick to the same routine every single morning, regardless of whether it's school or school holidays or weekends. So we get up every morning at 6:30 a.m. We take Archie downstairs in his lift. And then once we're downstairs, he goes into his wet room to have a shower, which can take up to 10 minutes. Once he's showered and dressed, we then make his breakfast, which is gluten and wheat-free diet. Once he's eaten his breakfast, he goes into the living room with a drink, and then he has his medication, which can take another 5 minutes, of obviously prepping the meds as well, which can take up to 10 minutes. Once Archie's all settled and sorted, it's clean up, get his bag ready for school, make sure he's got at least 4 pairs of trousers spare, 4 tops spare because he chews them. He looks like he's going to school with a suitcase most days. And then at 7:45 every morning, his transport bus turns up. So he has to then get into his wheelchair, make sure he's fastened in correctly, the position of his wheelchair is in. In the next couple of weeks, we will be adding in AFOs, which may take us a little bit more time to get him ready with them on. And then he's off to school, and then it's free for me for a few hours before he comes home. When he arrives home at 4 o'clock, his tea has to be on the table. He can't wait. So obviously preparation for his evening meal starts a lot earlier than most average families would have their evening meal. Once he's eaten his evening meal, he has 10-15 minutes to himself, take his shoes off and things, and then straight into the bathroom for his bowel management, which can take up to half an hour to 45 minutes. Once that's all done, he's showered and then ready for the evening in his pajamas. So that's just your typical morning and evening. In between, if it's school holidays, obviously, he might stay in his pajamas a little bit longer than that. But yeah, and then with days out, or he goes on his trampoline in his garden. And that's really it, really, as a typical day, because that kind of shapes the day to make sure his medication is given at the right time every single day, because otherwise it doesn't work effectively. And it kind of rules what else we can do in between those times, really. So on a school day, I must be home by 3 o'clock to make sure I've got an hour to prepare his tea. Otherwise he won't wait. He's up your back, he's banging on the table ready for his evening meal. So yeah. Is that okay?
I think the rigidity of the schedule, Aubry is that way too. Like even on a weekend, she wakes up at a certain time, no matter what. And she just, she is even to the point where she has a different therapy schedule every day. And she can tell you, she says her therapist's name versus like OT or speech. She knows what her therapist's name is. So she can tell you like, this is what I'm supposed to do today. And she's so rigid in her schedule. Like she's home today because we're having some bowel issues, and it has really, really thrown her off that she knows today's a school day. She should be at school, to the point that like on Fridays, her teacher has to kind of like, hey, it's the weekend this weekend. The schedule is different. She is so rigid in her schedules. So it's interesting to see that, you know, you guys are like that with Archie too.
Yeah, it does throw him off if you kind of do things slightly different. And so, yeah, especially around meal times.
I agree with you too. Ezra, we have a pretty, I don't want to say strict routine, but it sort of became that way because, you know, we have the routines of he needs his medications. You know, if he's not medicated with his seizure meds on time, puts him at risk to have seizures. So we have that. So, you know, he wakes up and we give him his meds, and then it just like, he knows the routine so well that he knows like, when I'm done this, I'm going to do this. And if you deviate from it, you know, it makes it hard. And a lot of it revolves around eating. I know our kids they have such voracious appetites. So, you know, it's like if his meal is not ready, or the moment, even if I put him in his feeding chair, and I have to make sure his meal is done, like made. If I put it on the table and he sees it, it's like he's lost it, you know? So he's so used to that routine. He knows what's happening next. And if you're not ready, it's like it changes everything. So you have to be a little ahead of the game for them too. I mean, I agree with you know, their routines sort of govern the day, which can make it a little challenging when you want to be a little more spontaneous. You know, if you want to go out with the family to do something, to travel, you know, you have to make sure you have all of the other things that you need for them as well, you know, like maybe specific type of meals, because I mean, Ezra, like Archie, we've been doing gluten-free meals. And so we have to plan ahead a lot to accommodate that. You know, for us, we can go out and have whatever to eat, but then I have to always make sure I have something for Ezra, you know, along the way.
Yeah, that's really similar in our house. I didn't mention it, but we have Charlie, and he is really hyper focused on his schedule and the time and the clock. I mean, he's got his day figured out down to the minute, where we're supposed to be, what show we're supposed to watch, what his medication is, what classroom he's supposed to be on. And, you know, and that's really great because it adds a lot of structure. But when we have to deviate from them, we see, you know, a little bit of anxiety from Charlie. What do you mean we can't have, or we're not going to? So it takes a little discussion and a reminder that it's okay, we can do this later. And not a whole lot of flexibility with him. He wants to do his routine, and which is great, because sometimes he drives off like, hey, I'm supposed to be in class, or I have to be over here, and just like, yeah, we're on it, we're getting there. So it's pretty cool to see that. But he can vocalize his frustration, you know, and that, you know, helps.
I think with Archie, because he can't vocalize, you do see some subtle changes, but he's a very placid child. So as long as you've done like the meds and the food, and he's getting fed and he snacks in between and he drinks, then it's absolutely fine what you do, but it has to involve his food. You know, you can't go off schedule on, well, it's lunchtime now, like there's an appointment coming up and it's right at dinner time. So if I don't take a packed lunch with me, he wouldn't be able to just wait like a typical child. You'll have to just wait. We'll have lunch later. No, that just doesn't happen with Archie. So we have to make sure we've got packed lunch, we've got snacks with us. And sometimes it does feel like, you know, 14 years later, we're still packing that baby bag.
Yeah.
And so that routine of what you do when you've just had a baby has stayed with us for 14 years. And we feel like I'm going on holiday some days with the amount of bags he needs. And so it is difficult, but you get used to it and you just carry on doing it.
We do the same thing. Aubrey's 7, she'll be 8 in October. And it's very much the same way. Like, we have snacks, and then we have emergency snacks, and then we have snacks hidden in the console of our car that don't go bad in the heat. And we have like emergency suckers just in case we're out somewhere and like she gets hungry, and that can kind of pacify her for a little while. But yeah, we still pack that baby bag. We still pack those extra clothes. We still pack the wipes and the pull-ups. Like we still, it's very much like a constant baby. Yeah.
Except the garments and the nappies and the diapers and things get twice as big the older they get. So
Yeah.
the bags get bigger and bigger and bigger, like you have to take with you. Yeah.
Yeah, we're the same way. We have the diaper bag, trying to get everything in there. We've got the backup snacks to the backup snacks. You just never know. You've got everything ready because you just don't know. I'd rather be prepared than deal with the wrath of Ezra when it's time for him to eat.
Yes, totally agree.
So we got one question coming in from France, and it's asking, why does the child need a routine? Is there a specific reason why there's a routine? I mean, do we see that because it's part of their autistic traits, or I think Patsy, you said yours is driven by medication.
I think routine stems from, all children love routine, and I think routine stems from when you have a baby. The first thing any health professional will say to you is get into a good routine, get into a good bedtime routine. What do you do before bedtime to help that child wind down? And for me, with a child with a neurological problem, their winding down time needs to be slightly different to a neurotypical child, and therefore I just think it becomes so natural, and you don't act like Nadia said, you don't actually realize you've become into a really strict routine until you decide to write it down and then go, oh yeah, that's very strict. And like I think the other morning I must have accidentally slept through the alarm, and it was a weekend, but it completely threw Archie's meds out for the evening. And I was kicking myself. I was like, oh, we've slept until 7:30 this morning. Most people have a lie in on a weekend, but we don't, because if we don't give those meds at that time, it completely throws his medication times out in the evening when he's naturally tired again, and that's his natural window to go to sleep. Because I have tried moving his bedtime routine later because he is 14, and he just didn't sleep because he was overtired. And I think it's understanding that children with neurological problems slightly need a little bit more routine than your typical child, who maybe can adapt to not having that routine, whereas our children just can't. They can't regulate the same way. So for me, it is important, really.
If I can add too, for Ezra, he's nonverbal. He's unable to express himself with words. He does, make his needs known by sounds. But I think also it takes out that stress level of, Ezra kind of knows what's going on. We don't have to, that's another way of communicating, is like, if we know what's coming up next, it eases the stress, maybe the anxiety. It can probably be a bit of a catch-22 at times, because, he may not want to do something, but I think, he might fight, resist meds. Some mornings he's just kind of like, looks at me like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, I know, dude, but we're here, we're doing it, we have to, but he knows that that's sort of what the next thing is too. Makes it easier, I think.
Aubry is more verbal, but she also, I think, knowing her routine, she does go to bed really early for a 7-year-old. Like, she's usually asleep by like 7. But it's also, it can kind of help us see if there might be like a seizure activity, or she's getting sick. If she is not so diligently in that routine. When she had her first seizure in June, she was off of her routine. She went to sleep later, and we were able to track, like, okay, sleep is an issue for her. If she's overtired, it can trigger a seizure for her. So that becomes something that we can tell other people, her teachers, her like any sort of respite person that's with her, like, hey, this is really, really important. So being super diligent about their routine can kind of help you see if there are cracks, if there are going to be issues. But yes, she does have the autism diagnosis. And I do think that, I mean, she just has this like crazy internal clock. She can be in the middle of speech and just kind of go, it's time to go. And no one has said it's time to go. She just has this like internal just click with her. So
Archie knows exactly where at 6:30 in the evening, he has 2 slices of his gluten-free toast. So he's having that just before he has some of his medication. So he's not having medication on an empty stomach. But at 6:30 every evening, you can guarantee without anybody, he stands up and walks into the kitchen. And it's like, how did you know? Without a doubt, every single night he does it. So he, like you say, it's routine. I have my shower and around about this time, 10-15 minutes later, I go and have toast. And he does, he literally, like, he knows what time it is.
Ezra's the
Yeah.
same. He's 4. I mean, and he knows exactly. He'll start making the sounds. You know, he's hungry, and I'll look at the clock too and be like, "Holy, yeah, this guy's right on time."
Yeah.
That's great. You know, and Megan, you bring up a really good point too. So Dr. Smith, and I'll encourage our viewers to go back and watch the conversation we had about sleep, but Dr. Smith really expressed the importance of a sleep routine and going through that process and being really regular with that. So that's a really good point. And the other thing in our house that drives our schedule is bathroom time, right? And so we struggle with regularity. And so making sure that Charlie gets into the bathroom at a certain time every day, right? We're trying to go and all those things. So I'm curious, and I'll start with you, Megan. You know, does Aubry struggle with digestive regularity? And, you know, if so, you know, what do you do to help her go? And do you notice any specific behavior changes when she might be backed up?
So Aubrey's actually home right now because she's constipated right now. And we sort of, we're still in the potty training process. She can't communicate that she has to go. So she's kind of on this like schedule. And again, that's kind of where the schedule comes in. You know, if she gets thrown off of that, it kind of throws her routine off. And, you know, we've talked about a lot, like my husband and I are not like dirty joke people, but we talk about poop almost constantly since we've had Aubrey. Like, it's like, did she go today? What did it look like? How much was it? And we always try to get ahead of the curve. So anytime we see any sort of change, Aubrey's got a G tube, she aspirates liquids, and liquids are a big part of kind of keeping her going. So when we see any sort of change, we immediately like step into motion, and we do like overnight tube feeds with just like water and lots of like just trying to get her to go. And sometimes it still, you know, causes issues, and we like today she's home and we're still trying to get her to go. And then the behaviors around that, kind of her behavior just changes. You can just tell like something's off with her.
So for us, digestion problems have been from birth. As he's progressed and got older, it has got worse. We do have a routine now as such, and we've kind of trained Archie's bowel. So we had what was called irrigation washouts. And if you do them at the same time for a prolonged period of time, the brain catches on with the bowel to say, oh, this is the time of day that I go. So we're at that stage that he goes every evening. But to be able to go every evening, he must have his medication in the morning, some medication overnight, and he also has a suppository on a daily basis, which keeps his left-hand side of his bowel empty, so that the right has got enough time to move round. But Archie seems to have a little bit of a problem in the right-hand side of his bowel, which is where it always gets stuck. And then his bowel tells his brain that there's a blockage when there really isn't a blockage. So it's called a pseudo obstruction. So it's a pretend obstruction. and the brain really thinks you've got a blockage. And that's where we used to get the vomiting episodes, where he'd be really sick and then he'd be dehydrated. If he cuts down on his fluid intake, we know that he's starting to be a problem. If he stops eating, so there's a pattern with Archie of he slows down with his eating and drinking. And again, it is all down to routine. If we don't keep on top of, because some people go, oh, do you have to do it every day? I was like, yeah, if we miss a day, we might have 3 weeks bad by just missing one day. So, and that does take over our life a little bit because it's a rigid routine. It's like, oh, we can't be out and be a half an hour late home because that throws him out. But we are doing well, touch wood. But we are seeing the specialists next week to talk about long term, because behavioural wise, like you said, Archie bites, he bounces really rigid, not bouncing because he's enjoying bouncing, he's bouncing because he's very uncomfortable. He's making really loud vocal noises, he's biting his hand, he's pulling at his tummy. But his school have now got starting to understand his noises, and they can say, oh, he's not being great today at school, and which helps when he comes home, so I know what kind of day he's had. But yeah, digestion issues has taken over my life, just like Megan says. We're not shy about talking about it.
No, we used to be, but then we're not anymore.
We've struggled with the same things with Ezra. I think sometimes, so in the beginning, you know, his low tone, he's got pretty severe low tone. And it's something that, you know, I learned that low tone isn't just in your, well, it's in your muscles, but it's really like your whole body, like everything. And so for him, it does affect muscle tones in his arms, legs, but also in his belly and his bowels. And, you know, ever since we really realized that, like when he's about 4 or 5 months old, we really started to notice the constipation starting. And, you know, I tried everything I could, you know, in the beginning, just trying to manage it as best as we could, making sure his fluids were, you know, adequate, you know, giving him some oatmeal with like flax seeds and chia seeds and coconut oil. And you're just like loading, you know, you're trying everything to kind of get him to go. But then we did start seeing a peds GI specialist, and, you know, her recommendation was Miralax, and, you know, we tried to do it like just as needed, but then, you know, it became this regular thing where he really does benefit from it every day. And, you know, in the beginning, I was really like, gosh, do I really want to give him this too? But, you know, a lot of it too is, you know, with low tone comes when we all have to go, you know, there's some effort of your body. Well, he doesn't have the strength to go. So that's also an issue, you know, so you have multiple factors that contribute to this. So, you know, he also would then battle gas, also battle some reflux because of not being able to go regularly. You know, and it's hard to see him like that. And like you mentioned, Patsy, about Archie, you know, the behavior, you know, we see that with Ezra too. He's more fussy, more irritable. You know, he does a lot of hands in the mouth. He becomes louder. He just seems agitated. He's restless. Yeah. And sometimes he doesn't eat. Then he doesn't want to eat well. He starts spitting out food. He's, you know, and I know he's hungry because, again, just a few minutes before he saw his plate and was freaking out and excited over wanting to eat. I get him to sit down. We start eating a few bites, but then it's just something isn't right. Like he's not comfortable. He gets more tense. And then we actually learned that, you know, constipation for Ezra is a trigger for seizures. So yes, when he isn't able to go, that also then affects that aspect of him. So it doesn't even matter what you've given, if that he's been taking his seizure meds, it's just that now this is another trigger. And it's funny, when I talked to his neurologist about that, you know, he was kind of like, it's interesting that you ask, because there isn't a lot of like research or literature out there that shows that constipation is a trigger. However, he said when he talks to all of his families, this is a common thing, and that they all say, whenever they're not able to go regularly, they have more seizures, in play.
Sorry, Nazia, it's very funny because when I spoke to Archie's neurologist and she said there's not much literature, but I did a diary and showed that when he's in pain because of his bowel and then he doesn't sleep, there is triggers, and it's always the same.
Yes.
We haven't seen any of Archie's big seizures since January. His mini focal seizures we haven't seen since we started the carbamazepine in December, until the other day when his bowel started playing up, and then we saw some, and I was like, they are definitely a trigger. And his neurologist said there's a common link, but there's also what they call abdominal epilepsy. So your bowel triggers that seizures, and it's called abdominal epilepsy. And I said, it's very rare, but it's very rare in literature, but it's not rare from the stories that they hear from parents. So it's strange how it happens all around the world, because that is a common theme.
I think, and you also mentioned about the sleep. So like with Ezra too, if he's backed up and he can't go, it messes up his sleep because he's just uncomfortable and can't settle into a good night's sleep, which then, it's just like one thing into the next, and then it into the third, which is like triggering the seizure. So that it just seems like it's all linked. Digestion is linked to like everything.
And it took me a long time to kind of start to see that and work Archie out. So it was probably about 7 or 8, maybe 9, when I started thinking there's something, and I wrote diaries for everything: food diaries, bowel diaries, sleep diaries, everything I could possibly think of. Everything was wrote down, and I would try and link. I was doing the investigation, but the fact that Ezra is a lot younger than Archie, and it's great that you've seen that. I wish we'd have had that when he was younger, to have that kind of information and support to kind of go, oh, I never thought of that before, but maybe that's why. And like linking to the sleep thing is, you said Aubry goes to bed quite early for a 7-year-old. Archie's 14 and he goes to bed at 7 p.m. because that's his natural window. So for our children, we have to think outside of the box, because if that works for them and keeps them healthy, that's what's important. And changing those routines and having other parents kind of say it's okay, you can change, and try and get a better routine for you and what works for you.
So that's so spot on. And Nazira, you touched on something really, really important. Ezra is nonverbal. So how do you know when something is wrong? And I think the bigger question is, how do you figure out what it is?
Well, that is, it's, so to be honest, so when Ezra's first not feeling well, we talked a lot about eating habits. So for Ezra, the first thing we notice is like his appetite changes. So sometimes I've kind of mentioned, with the constipation, if he's not able to go, then, he might want to eat, but then when we start eating, he spits out his food. So I start seeing some things like that going on. He just seemed, I can just tell like he's agitated. I read a lot of his body language. Overall, I notice sometimes like his volume when he's, making his sounds gets higher, a little bit more shrill. His physical behaviors that he does a lot of like, hand flapping, those become more present. Like we just see them a lot more. So when those things happen, I have like this mental checklist. And so I start kind of going down this list of things, and which is kind of exhausting at the same time, because when he's off, I feel like everything in the whole household is off. I'm sure it reflects on my own like attitude, because I'm just like focused on like trying to figure out what's going on with Ezra, what's going on. So it makes it really challenging. But that's kind of, just again, when he's not feeling well, I think just just how he's behaving, his sounds. I'm, really in tune. I think of it as like when we have these newborn babies, they're not talking yet, but they show their displeasure or pleasure, like with their sounds, with their body movements, those kind of things. And so it's kind of just an extension of that for us, for the most part. Seeing a lot of that with Ezra, but
That's
Yeah.
the same for Archie, really, with him being non-verbal. I think he does his little like tapping his chin anyway, but you see it more when he's agitated. You see him hitting himself more, the bouncing more. You can kind of think, okay, that's actually being happy, and then you kind of see a different level, and then, like you say, trying to eliminate things. So if I think his bowels have been okay, I can kind of eliminate that out of the head and think, right, what next? Is it his teeth? Is it his? Has he got a headache? But it was only last year. I mean, he's always hit his stomach when it was pain in his belly, but it was only last year that he started hitting his chest. And when he was checked, because of the seizures, he had aspirated, and he had aspirated pneumonia. So he was telling me by hitting his chest more. But to other people, I mean, to one doctor who said, well, is this just his behaviour because he's got a learning disability? And I was like, no, he's telling us he's in pain, but I just can't work out where. So yeah, it is hard, and you do give that mental checklist of going through, right, we've done this, we've done that, we've done that. Okay, there's nothing else I can do. We're just going to have to wait it out and see what happens and if anything materializes.
We had that issue with Aubry. Aubrey's a little more verbal. Sometimes she can tell us if she wants a snack, but it's still very much a guessing game with her. A couple of weeks ago, she just was crying and just was irritable, and we couldn't figure it out. We went through, that's kind of where the schedule's important, because we say, okay, well, this is normally what time she does this. That's probably why she's upset. But we still could not figure it out. And 2 days later, she was still just kind of just complaining, just fussy and irritable. And she's sitting on the couch next to me, and she does this, and she holds a tooth out. She had a loose tooth, and she was having a tooth come in, and she couldn't tell me that, that was exactly what was wrong. Even though she is a little bit more verbal, she still just can't really express what it is. So it's always a guessing game. It's always, ticking down your list of okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and still not always knowing.
Yeah, and I think that mental checklist is really important, and I expect that evolves over time. So as our children grow and mature, I know we had a member of our community going through the same thing. Had their child was in a lot of pain, they couldn't figure it out, and after a period of time, lo and behold, it's their wisdom teeth coming in, right? And they can't say it, right, or they're not able to express it. So I think our checklist will continue to evolve as as we see them grow and mature. So let's talk a little bit about exercise. So Patsy, I'd love to hear what Archie does for fun, what he likes, what gives him both mental and physical stimulation, and if there's anything that you do as a family that you enjoy that you get to do together.
So Archie loves being outdoors. Doesn't really tolerate being indoors very much. A little bit more placid now he's got a bit older, but he loves the outdoors. So he loves being on his trampoline. He also likes going for walks, seeing the trees, watching people. But he's a bit of a thrill seeker. So Archie loves theme parks. He will go on any ride. He absolutely loves rides. So he went to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, that's in the UK, over in Lancashire, and he went there with his care company, with a group of people that go to his school. So in the school holidays, he gets 2 days a week in the school holidays. So if we've got 1 week, he gets 2 days. when we're off for the summer, he gets 2 days per week out with the care company, and he went to Blackpool, and obviously it's been locked down. I was like, oh, I wonder how he'll be. Will he be fearless? You know, how will he react to a fast ride? And they said he absolutely had a ball. He was laughing and howling all the way around. He was throwing his hands in the air. I was like, oh, I hope you were holding him. And yeah, he's definitely a thrill seeker, is Archer. But at the same time, he also likes calming things as well. So he likes being in the swimming pool. And he likes going for walks. He likes places like trampoline parks. He's not a cinema type of guy. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't really like screens. But one care company did once take him to the cinema to watch Paddington Bear, and he got up and smashed the screen. So yeah, he did that to our TV in lockdown as well. So yeah, so he's definitely not a screen person type of guy. And I think moving on into adulthood, when school ends, he's definitely going to need a lot of care outside. As a family, due to my own health needs, I don't get to go on many like days out without being poorly or in a lot of pain afterwards. So think, but what 14-year-old wants to go out with the mum anyway? So we're kind of at that stage. We've gone past that stage of, oh, let's go to a zoo and, you know, all the big days out that you do with your little children. He's at an age he needs to be with friends. So we're kind of at that stage at the moment with Archie. So it's really difficult, and we've had nowhere to go really because of lockdown. But we like the beach, and we do like I do like going to the zoo with him and watching the monkeys jump on your car and pull your windscreen wipers off. And yeah, he actually finds that hilarious. So he'll sit up the front and watch. So yeah, but for Archie's exercise wise, he does a lot of walking around school, walking at home, trampolining, his hydrotherapy, swimming, rebound therapy at school. He doesn't get 2 minutes to sit down in school, to be fair. He is actually walking constantly, so he gets a lot of exercise.
Oh, that's excellent. And Megan, did I see Aubry on some 2 wheels out there?
Yes, we just got a grant, and we got a bike, an adaptive bike. She loves the bike at her physical therapist's office, and she just got one for home, and she loves it. She loves to be able to ride with her brother, and it's good because she can kind of work her muscle. Her legs the tone is just so low that anything we can do to help work those muscles. She also she has like a 3-wheel scooter that it took her about a year to figure out how to ride it, but now she really learned how to ride it during lockdown. She's like peeking in through here right now. But yeah, she's very much like Patsy said, she loves to swim. She loves to just be outside. After school, she might be too tired to move around outside, but just like she'll just go sit or lay on a bench in the outdoors, and she loves to just be outside.
So good. And Nazira, I think I've seen all kinds of gadgets and floating contraptions at your house.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Ezra.
Yeah. So Ezra, again, he's limited mobility. So he really enjoys, for the most part, being moved. So we do a lot of therapies with him. He gets all the therapies. And so we've been lucky to have some therapists who think a little outside the box. And we're always open to trying something new. So one of his physical therapists, we have a gait trainer to help Ezra be upright and try to learn how to move his legs like in a walking pattern. And so one day she said, you know what, I saw this really cool video and I want to try it if you're okay. I was like, sure. So we adapted it, brought down the seat lower, and we put Ezra in there to try to learn to crawl. So to work on those muscles, and it was great. And it was a little awkward, but at the same time, it was fun to see him do it. And it's definitely a two man job when we do that, but it was so cool. And I really appreciated that too, because we had equipment, and we're just using it a little bit differently, and trying to get him to learn. It's a lot of work. You take it for granted, typical development in a child. You absolutely do. But Ezra, so he loves to move. He loves dancing. So usually I'm holding him, which he's like nearly 45 pounds. So I'm slow dancing or dancing with him. I get a workout too, oftentimes. But he loves to swing. He loves just motion, being in motion. And so bouncing on a ball, we would hold him, bounce him on like a yoga ball. One of the things we love to do as a family is we love the beach. We love being in the pool. Summer's coming upon us. We love being in the water. So my husband was diligent and did lots of research last summer, found this really cool flotation device. And we bought it. And at first Ezra was very leery about it, was not sure. He protested a bit, but then once we got him in the water, he loved it. I mean, it's kind of circular around, so his head is above water, but his whole body is submerged. Ezra loves playing with his feet and loves the hands in the mouth. So that was where we learned. That's what he was really complaining about. But once he got used to just being able to grab his feet underwater, he would just literally hold his feet and like float in like a circle around, but he was content and he loved it. And so that gave us a really cool opportunity as a whole family to play in the water together. And so our daughter, who's 6, I mean, she loved it too, because she can play with Ezra now. We taught her how to like rescue Ezra, and she'd jump in the water, grab the little tag on the back of it and pull him around. And he loved it. It was not smooth and seamless at all. He was very jerked around, but he loved it. And she just had a blast. So that was really a huge benefit, again, the water giving him a lot of that sensory input too. And then, again, as a family. So we have to get a little savvy about sometimes doing family activities. We're hoping to get a bike too. Maybe next summer, we'll see. Insurances are now starting to look at the benefits of that so depending on how that goes, that might be something else on our list of cool equipment for Ezra too.
Yeah. Bikes are kind of empowering too. So, Charlie over the last few years has kind of learned how to ride with the training wheels, and we've got these, I forget what they're called, but these big training wheels on the bike. And so it's almost like a trike. And, we start to do some family trips down a trail, and he's just pedaling along with us. And he's so excited to be out there and doing it. It gives us something to do as a family with, as an activity, which is just kind of a blessing to kind of get outside and just soak in some fresh air and some sunshine.
Yeah, I actually had a trike when he was younger. So we've been there, we've done that, we've had it, we've moved on sort of thing from it. But again, what you were saying about the swimming when Archie was younger, that was one thing we struggled with. We couldn't find a device, and because of his head and the weight of his head, he used to kind of hold it in the water. So eventually I got him just a normal swim ring. He'd wear armbands with the swim ring that would keep him up. But Archie used to love to duck his head underwater, and his bum would come up, and I used to call him like my little mallard duck, because he was just like that. And when he first went to high school, in his primary school there was no swimming pool, but when he went to high school, he has access to a swimming pool on a daily basis. And they was all petrified. They were like, oh my God, he's going underwater. I went, it's fine, he'll come back up, just leave him. He's fine. And he doesn't even have a swimming aid anymore. He's fine in the water because, of course, he's bigger now, he's taller, he can reach the bottom of the pool. But the we're talking about exercise, what the swimming has done for Archie as well is the pool steps. Archie can't do stairs. He can't, his visual impairment and his depth perception, he can't do stairs very well. But we've been learning them, and he's been practicing on the steps getting out at hydrotherapy pool. And now he's just started walking onto the school transport bus up the steps. So as much as he's doing some exercise and enjoying himself, he's also doing the physical therapy and putting that everyday activities that is, like you said, now, the typical things that we take for granted, how easy our children develop. Our children don't develop those skills, and Archie completely missed crawling, so we never developed those upper body skills at all. But the bikes are definitely a good thing for postural support.
Thanks, Patsy. That actually brings up, we have a question that came in, and it's about walking and what to expect. And can anyone talk a little bit about your experience for, getting mobile? We've got a question in, their child is now 2 years old and they don't know what to expect when walking might happen, or maybe some activities that can help promote walking.
Do you want me? For us, Archie was an early walk. He wasn't an early walker. He was late to walk, but he was early compared to some of the children who we've got Smith-Kingsmore. So we just practiced with him and made sure he had a standing frame to start with, to help him get used to standing on his feet. And we got an assessment for a walking frame, and he did really well on it. And the physio said, so we'll get him a walking frame ordered. And I was like, what do you mean? Can we not take this one away? And she was like, no, this is for assessment purposes. So I said, well, how many children have you got to assess? And she went, well, actually, there's nobody booked in. I went, well, we'll just take this one then. So I literally kind of just took it off of her and said, well, you can't tell me he needs a walking frame and then not give me one. So I was quite forward with that. And we got him doing the walking with that. But one day, he just chose himself to kind of let go. But then he was falling. And in my eyes, he was going to cause himself more damage. So he went back to school after the summer break. And I didn't send his walking frame back. And the teacher's like, where's his walking frame? Where's his walking frame? I was like, just hold his hand. He'll be fine. Just think of him. Just act like he's a typical 18-month-old baby, a 12-month-old baby learning to do steps. What would you do with a baby? You'd hold the hand and you'd support him. Just support him in the same way. And they were like, oh, we can't do that, manual handling. And I was like, well, you're not having it. I've sent it back. And she just looked at me and went, oh. And as I'd sent it back and he'd learned to walk, the brand new walking frame arrived. I was like, you're 9 months too late. We've got him walking. And I think for me, it was more of, I am going to get him walking. So we need to get that upper strength. And I just practiced and practiced every day until I was so tired that's all I did was practice getting him on his. Every little minute of the day was right on your feet. He must have thought, who's this crazy woman? But for it, he was, once he learned to walk, that was it. It was like, he's walking. He was unsteady on his feet. What we did find is, unfortunately, his gait is very wide, and the splints, he needs like a wedge, but we're trialing splints again now. But because of his sensory issues, he doesn't get the feedback off the floor that he would normally need, and his visual impairment. So it was about understanding his visual impairment as well as his sensory need and how he processed the world around him. So if you put him in an unfamiliar place, he can't walk. But put him in a familiar place and he's virtually running. So it's about understanding that. So for some children, they may walk at school more, but not walk at home, or walk at home but not at school. And we just built it up from there. So he was 3.5 when he officially walked without his walking frame.
I think Aubry was 2.5, 3 when she really started walking, but she was in physical therapy at a really, really young age. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just like doing the physical therapy, doing the work with that. I mean, it's still a very slow process. At one point, we were going to physical therapy twice a week. And even now, she still has a wheelchair because she can walk, but she does get tired. And she grows so fast. She has AFOs for her feet because her muscle tone is so low that her feet get kind of floppy. But the biggest thing is just the physical therapy, continuing to just keep up working on it. But I mean, if they have the low muscle tone, which most of the kids I think do, it's just a really, really slow process. So
start physical therapy early and stick with
Yeah.
it and keep trying and keep going, right? Practice,
Yeah,
practice.
definitely. Never give up hope, ever.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Ezra's 4.5 now, and he's not walking. So we, I mean, along the way with, yes, the low muscle tone, and he started physical therapy at a very young age too. Once we missed all the milestones, when your child's 9 months old and they have missed the amount that they allot, and then they say, okay, we need to intervene. I mean, we started right away, and we've now increased it to twice a week for physical therapy as well, and we're coming at them at all different angles. But we do battle seizures often, and so I feel like sometimes those are also hindrances. He has seizures on a regular basis for sure, and then the medications too. Some of the side effects can cause imbalance, just like more floppy. When he gets a dose increase, sometimes his muscle tone does decrease for a period of like 2 to 3 weeks. So it makes it, and he gets sleepy. It makes it a bit of a challenge too. So sometimes I feel like it's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of deal. And then if they get sick, sometimes they just don't feel good for days. It's a little bit longer. So I have hope that Ezra will walk. I feel like he does things on his own time. Sometimes when we do physical therapy, he's not about it at all. Like any child, they don't want to, that's not fun all the time. But, I think it's patience with your child, patience with you, because we do have that expectation. Sometimes if you have another child that is neurotypical, that developed super quick, our daughter walked before she was 1. And so that was sort of our expectation too. But when we started learning about a lot of the families having kids who walked outside of that normal range, and that range, I think there's quite a few that are walking later. There's one little guy, another SKS family. I mean, when I see him walking, and he's probably about like 8 or 9, and he's still pretty wobbly on his legs. I get so excited when I see videos of him, and it usually brings me to tears, because he reminds me of Ezra in so many ways. And when I see him like that, like, it gets me excited, and I know he can, because Ezra with help can stand up. He's very wobbly. He's new to AFOs now. We've upgraded. So I'm like, ooh, that's an exciting time for us. We got AFOs, really cool, and got to buy him new shoes. And, then you see him getting that a little extra support. So I think it can get pretty frustrating sometimes, and you see all the other children and you want your child to walk too. And it can be, and it's hard. There's moments and days when I get kind of sad about it and wish, Ezra could do that. But I have faith. I have faith that he will. And he may be 9 or 10 years old when he finally can do it. And you know what? That's okay. I'm just excited and looking forward to the day that he can. And we're going to keep trying, and you just have to keep going, keep going, and thinking positive for them too, and for you.
Yeah, you see, as Archie's got older, his mobility is slowing, and I don't know. You made a good point there around the medications and the seizure meds. Everything ties in from when he first started having seizures. That he started to lose his mobility. He didn't have as much stamina anymore. he was fatigued all the time, and so he was off of his feet. And it's like, he's learned that skill, we know he's got it, but sometimes he doesn't use the skill, so he will choose now to sit down rather than walking. He's, one of his typical things is you've got to be very clear when you're going somewhere with him. So like, his respite carer decided they were going to the supermarket, but she said, come on Archie, we're going to Tesco. So they got in the car, and they got to Tesco, the supermarket, and he just sat down at the door. I'm at Tesco's, what more do you want? So she had to go, we need to go into Tesco's, Archie. And then he just stood up and walked into Tesco's, and she was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, he'll choose to sit down once you've said where he's going. So he literally just sat there like that. And the store had to get a wheelchair for him because she didn't take his wheelchair with him. And I was like, yeah, you need to take his wheelchair, because he will just sit down if he's had enough, or you're not being specific on telling him where you are going. He tries to run, but he can't really run. But he did learn a skill last week. He can jump. He started jumping for his dad. So we're on a new skill at the moment of off the floor, not jumping on his like trampoline or anything. From the floor, he actually jumped. So a new skill is coming.
Excellent. Let's change gears a little bit. We talked a lot about our children and some of those challenges, but you all are amazing, and it takes a lot to keep our children going. So Megan, I'm going to start with you. You know, parenting is tough, you know, regardless of SKS or not, right? And SKS just adds an additional element on top of all of that. How do you rest and recharge, and what do you do to take care of yourself through all this?
I'm honestly not super great about resting and recharging. My husband gets really upset with me because he's like, you're always adding things, you're never taking things away. But after the lockdown, I kind of realized that I will burn out very quickly if I don't start taking those things. So we do have respite that we get. We try to take, you know, even if it's an hour, leaving them with a grandmother, or you know, just try to take that time to just kind of breathe and relax. And we get the respite. Like, we actually, my parents are going to keep the kids overnight this weekend, which I get a little OCD about. My mom makes fun of me because like I laminated a schedule for her. But I think it's really important to have those overnight times away, because our kids, they're needy 24/7. Like when they're sleeping, you kind of worry, for us anyway. Like Aubry's seizure was during her sleep, so now we're constantly kind of on edge, and we don't sleep soundly. So I feel like getting those breaks where you're 100% off the clock and you can just breathe are so huge. I know it's been really hard because of the pandemic, but things are slowly opening up and slowly starting to happen now. And we try to do that. We would like to do it more, but we try to do it like once a month, you know, just like a 24-hour kid-free, sleep as much as you want, do whatever you want, because we are so regimented.
I will agree that this is a work in progress for me and my husband, trying to find the balance on how to take care of ourselves. And, you know, it's hard. It's really hard. You know, like, so we qualified for respite. So we're a military family, and there's a program within the military. And so we do get respite care. And I try to schedule her to come, you know, once a week. And, but it's still hard, you know, because I feel like there's always something to do, something I need to do. You know, I have another child, so I want to have time with her because she doesn't always get all of me. So sometimes that respite time is given to her. You know, my husband and I tried to do, when we first started getting it, the respite care, like a date night. And so, I mean, that's like, we would go and it would only be like a 2 hour, we just wanted to go have a meal and talk, have adult conversation, which was great, And I thoroughly enjoyed it. However, I also have access to Ezra's baby video monitor. So I could just pull up and see how Ezra is, because so I'm not really 100% separated. Like I know that. And so, like I said, it's a work in progress. You talked about being OCD and having this laminated schedule. Well, on our refrigerator, we have that whole one side is color coded routines for my daughter, for my son. There's a sheet in case of emergency. You can rip that and give it to the paramedics. It has my daughter's nice short information about her health, and then the rest is all Ezra's, to like medications and dosages and time of day, surgeries, you name it, it's there, because it's a lot. I have everything written everywhere in different parts of the room, in Ezra's room, in our living room. You know, where is this emergency med? Where is this? Where is that? Because it's handy. And I just tell them, in case, you know, it's here, and in case I've forgotten to tell you, or in case you forget, because thankfully, you know, Ezra does have seizures only at night right now and not during the day. So, you know, we have to, you know, needless to say, it is a work in progress, and I'm learning little by little some of the things, and a lot of it's comfort level for me. I'm not that comfortable yet leaving Ezra for a whole weekend. So I commend you for 24-hour getaway. I can hear my husband right now. He's probably looking at this going, yeah, we need to do that. And I'm going to be like, not ready. I'm not ready.
Well, it helps that my mom is a nurse. So
yeah,
that does help.
It's true. My mother-in-law is a nurse too. So like when she comes to visit, we usually unfortunately take full advantage. And I'm sure she's listening to this too. And I'm like, we will always take full advantage when she's here because of that, you know, but it is hard. It's hard to just, you know, to do that.
Well, and you said something about, you know, Ezra does have a sibling. And it's really important to us too. I have a friend who is a sibling. She's an adult sibling of someone with special needs. And she gave me some really, really good advice and told us to really try to carve out time with Aubry has an older sibling as well. Just like the two of us with him. So he sees, you know, his mom and dad not constantly worried about his special needs sibling, 100% attention to him. Like he is the focus, because I think so often special needs siblings kind of get, I don't want to say pushed to the side, but they kind of get like on the back burner. And so we have really seen such a change with our son, just spending that like one-on-one time with him. And we try to carve out time, that something that, you know, Aubry can't necessarily do because of her limitations. So it's something he would get to do that he normally wouldn't if Aubry was with us. And it just makes such a big difference.
So for me, things are slightly different again, because Archie's older. It was hard at the beginning, taking advice from other people, you know, about looking after yourself and your well-being, and you kind of go, yeah, and you just carry on. And I'd had a couple of burnouts where it was like, which kind of highlighted to me how important it was to get those breaks. I don't have family support. Unfortunately, both my parents passed away. My mum had a stroke before Archie was born, and then she passed away the year that Archie was born. So really, I only have my dad, but he was disabled, and so he couldn't really look after Archie or anything. So eventually we got respite in place, and it was really hard letting go. It was, it took me nearly 3 years before I allowed him to go for more than one night. But it is really important, and I will bring up my little not today day that I pencil in my diary of a day that's today. I'm not doing any appointments. I'm not even going to answer my phone to any professional that rings. Kind of like, no, not today. I'll ring you back. And sometimes that might be a day where I just stay at home and I literally do nothing, or it might be a day like today I've gone for my hair doing. And yeah, and I kind of like go, okay, let's see what's, in the month, kind of like look at, like, see what's really important, what needs to be really done, and would it, if I didn't do it, would it be detrimental for not doing it? And I kind of prioritize those kind of jobs. But yeah, I think another thing for me, what highlighted mine and Archie's dad's relationship broke down. We didn't have time for each other. We lost each other in it all while trying to fight to get those breaks so we could have a break together. The relationship just broke down. So I'm very cautious with my partner now, Chris, that actually it's really important for me and him to have that relationship time as well. We're not just carers to Archer, and I'm not just a mum. Especially now Archie's a bit older, because that's when most parents would get more time, would they? They'd be able to have time together because the children can stay at home for an hour while we do something. So, but I always say to parents of younger children, you're allowed to give yourself permission. It is okay to say you need a break. You are not super parents, and you don't need to do it all the time. And sometimes just letting somebody else do it highlights how much you do need that break. So I always say to parents, yeah, give yourself permission and go and have that break. Because it even that full night's sleep, like you were saying about watching the camera and being aware about seizures, like Archie was awake from midnight last night, and yeah, that's great. I can hear him anyway through the walls, but I have to listen to him on the monitor, because if at any point, because he's been awake and he will be tired, if he decides to fall asleep, that's likely the time where he will have a seizure. So I'm not really sleeping and I can't switch off. So when he's at respite, it's kind of like, oh, it's just peace. And I just feel like a different woman the day after, because I know I've had sleep. But I do get a regular break from his dad every Friday. So I get that every Friday night. I kind of get a sleep, and I do feel refreshed, ready for the weekend.
Patsy, that is so powerful, giving yourself permission to take a break. And I think that your calendar hack is probably one of the coolest things I've heard in a while, right? The not today day. And I think the biggest point of that is, and I think everyone's touched on this a little bit, is those days where you have that are not today, don't jam them in with everything else that you're supposed to, you feel like you're supposed to be doing on that day, right? And actually taking those rest days as rest and recharge days, and binge a show, sit in the backyard, right? Read a book or something something for you. And that, how powerful to just give yourself permission. Thank you, Patsy. So we are getting close to wrapping up, and we're down to our last question. And Azira, I'm going to start with you. SKS is rare. If you think back to when you first got your diagnosis and what that looked like, my question for you is, where do you find information about SKS, and where do you find support? We've got an awesome community. Where do you find support and get that back and forth communications with some of your fellow SKS parents?
That's a great question. So when we first got Ezra's diagnosis, he was diagnosed August 2019. And after like 3 rounds of doing genetic tests, we really struggled to get a diagnosis for him, but we were successful. And the geneticists at the time, they handed us, 2 research papers. And they said, Ezra's the 5th child at this time that we know of that has this gene variant. So we were like, okay. He said, Ezra has something called an mTOR related disorder. Okay. And then we were like, what does this mean? And we were really lucky to have this genetic counselor who said, they explained to us what that meant. And they also said, the first thing we would recommend you doing is looking at, a syndrome called Smith-Kingsmore Syndrome. Ezra has, at that time, his gene variant wasn't recognized yet as Smith-Kingsmore. And they said, look at this, because there's a lot of similarities to what Ezra has in this. And there's just these couple of minor things that we question. We don't know, is it, maybe this will be rolled in or not. The genetic counselor said, there's this Facebook page that you should check out. And so we were like, okay, deer in the headlights. All right. Once that settled, I think like the next week or two after I looked it up, and I found out later that it was Megan. She was the one that created this amazing, amazing page. When we shyly became members, because we didn't really know, we were kind of like, we didn't know if we belonged yet into this community, because again, Ezra's variant wasn't yet recognized. We were really cautious and shy, but we started seeing families being very, open about their child and just asking questions. And, I thought, well, seems like a really good place. We started just asking questions. Everybody embraced us. We learned more about Smith-Kingsmore. We would say, yeah, Ezra, totally. This is totally like Ezra. This is what he does. So then we started feeling comfortable, because the families there were really easygoing, wanting to share. I mean, Megan would share posts almost every day about Aubry. So we'd learn about Aubry, which I loved, by the way, and how beautiful she is. But also made it really conversational, just made it really nice and casual, non-threatening. We could ask, it was a place that we felt safe to ask whatever, from digestive issues, like we've talked about, sleep, seizures, and vision issues. Ezra also has cortical visual impairment, CVI. We started talking about that, noticing a lot of children do require, some glasses or vision therapies. And it was great, because it was suddenly a place of support. And for the longest time, we felt really kind of alone on this journey. And so suddenly we had a family that we belonged to. And then when they said, you know what, we feel that Ezra's gene variant is part of Smith-Kingsmore, it just opened up that embrace even more, just having it like another community and family. And there's nothing like it. In the beginning, we weren't sure if a diagnosis would really make a difference. It wouldn't change the fact that Ezra would need physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of these therapies. But it did, because it suddenly made us feel like we had friends and family that are like family. Because, everybody in the community that we've met, they understand it. They understand exactly what we mean. When we're talking, the three of us, 4 of us families talking about this, we're nodding our heads going, yeah, me too, me too. And it's wonderful to have that, because otherwise sometimes it's a bit complex to explain to people. It's not just one thing that we need to struggle on. It's a multitude of disabilities, as well as challenges, and that we are trying to make sense of and figure out what's the best for our child. And having that support and community, I think, is huge. And so I want to just thank you, Megan, for making that, because I really would not have met any of you all. So and it feels lighter. It feels like the journey, the work, what we do every day feels a bit lighter, because you have someone to talk to. So you can hop on there and we just say, hey guys, quick question, this is what's going on. Any suggestions? I know I see Patsy on there a lot, and she we feel like we see Archie every day too, because we hear all about these wonderful, sometimes the hard times, and we also hear about the celebrations, which I think is really important too for our kids. We want to celebrate our kids, and nobody else is going to get it, but our Smith-Kingsmore family, they get it. They're like, yay.
I feel very lucky just to touch on this. I was part of a community anyway for a group within Facebook, but it's also related to Genetic Alliance. And it was a group called SWAN UK, which is Syndromes Without a Name, which is National Undiagnosed Day is on the 30th of April. And they was like that for me. It was like a community of, it didn't really matter whether your child kind of had the same thing or not. We were all going through it together. So I've had that kind of support throughout since I actually was 4. When I joined, he was 4. So we're 10 years down the line. And we have a saying in Swan, once a swan, always a swan. So, but I've built up friendships with those families. I've met them and we have days out and things. But the first thing I did when I got the phone call from Archie's geneticist for his diagnosis, I remember the phone call and she's like crying down the phone to me. She's like, we found it, I've found it. You know, she'd been on the journey 11 years with us. And she just said, a paper landed on my desk and I just looked at the paper and went, this is Archie, let's test his gene. So she did, and obviously came back as Smith-Kingsmore. She said, there's not much out there. There's not a lot on Google, so don't go away and Google, Patsy, because you might not understand it. And I thought, there must be a Facebook group. There has to be a Facebook group. And if there's not, then I'm going to make one. And I literally found Megan. And so we was diagnosed in January of 2018. And Megan explained that she'd sat there for 2 years nearly with this little Facebook group. And then people started joining slowly. And I actually remember feeling very disheartened at the fact that nobody was part of the UK. And I was like, is anybody going to get diagnosed? And then people from the UK were getting diagnosed. And it's literally grown in strength. And we all got to meet, I suppose, in 2019. And I think that really helped to feel connected in some way because we'd all kind of met. And then more and more families are getting joining. And like the young man who's 30, that blew me away. It was like 30 years of age and he's got his own child. And it was like, what inspiration to have. Like you were saying, touching, oh, well, you know, will he ever walk? Will he ever this? Will he have that? But to have those hopes and dreams that it's such a wide spectrum that we actually really don't know what our children are actually capable of. And we're on a journey of they'll do what they're going to do. And that'll be it. That's what's right for them. And another child might do something different. But to have everybody in the same boat as kind of like, oh, have you heard that the mTOR can cause this, you know, checklist? You know, I didn't know he actually needed to see an endocrinologist, but I'm glad we did now because he's got some endocrine problems. So I wouldn't have known that without you guys on Facebook and Dr. Laurie Smith kind of going, oh, yes. So it's just a wealth of knowledge, isn't it? And I don't know many groups who have got professionals on there as well that are willing to share. And that's what I love about you Americans is you're very much willing to share everything. We don't get that here. We don't get that here very often. So yeah, I do very much appreciate that Megan started the Facebook group and all the work that's gone into the Smith-Kingsmore Foundation. I just think it's fabulous to have something and to have an answer. 11 years without an answer.
Yeah, that is so true. We're a small but growing, and I think a very strong community. And between the Facebook groups, and we've got the smithkingsmore.org website that's got a lot of medical information on it too. And I think a great use of that website is point it out to your doctors, right? And you know, if you're seeing people for the first time, it gives them a good background of what's going on. We've got a patient registry that's forming, so we're really collecting some data. Just it's all to strengthen our community and our children's lives. So really good stuff. I think those Facebook pictures and Nazira, you said it perfectly. We feel like we're on Archie's journey with him. We see Aubry on her bike, and it's just it's you may, as a parent, may not know it, but we are all with you. You know, we might not be saying it out loud, but we're with you on that journey because we're living through those pictures and those moments, and we love seeing them. So I have to tell you, it's been just an absolute honor to have been able to spend this time with the three of you. You guys are amazing. Lots of great information. You're courageous, and I just want to thank you for being willing to share and really supporting our community. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great day, guys.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.